Hey guys, I want to tell you about my most memorable summer. It involves a parent-free house, the girl of my dreams, and my little bro Silas's massive secret. Actually, Silas doesn't want me telling you about it, but this story is too fun to keep it for ourselves. So stay tuned, let me tell you what happened. Imagine the scene. I'm there eating corn dogs when my parents announce they're going away on vacation for their 20th wedding anniversary. That means I'll be home alone all week long in our big farmhouse surrounded by vast fields. Sounds great, right? But wait, it got even better when my childhood friends who had now lived in another city were also back in town for the summer vacation. Of course, my parents let me invite them over to stay while they're away. That's how close our families were. Oh God, I haven't seen Carl in over a year. And his sister Ellie too. Yep, I wouldn't say that I had the biggest crush on my best friend's sister, but there's that. Anyway, this was gonna be my summer paradise. But you know, man proposes, God disposes. It turns out my parents weren't taking Silas with them because they thought I was old enough to look after my little brother. Ugh, what a bummer. How was I meant to impress Ellie when I had a whining kid to care for? I needed to think fast. So as soon as we waved our parents off, I passed my PS4 to him and said, Silas, you can play on it, but only if you promise to do as I ask and stay out of my way. Of course, he agreed. I mean, what 8-year-old boy wouldn't want to play Fortnite? I checked on him now and then and gave him juice and snacks. Other than that, I had plenty of time to spend hanging out with Carl and Ellie. Things were going well for the first few days, and nothing beats being around your best bud and your crush all day long. Whoa, I just couldn't take my eyes off Ellie. She seemed to have gotten even more beautiful. Then, on one evening, we were sitting outside stargazing. It was so romantic, especially when Carl thought it was dull and left us to go to bed first. I was about to do the whole yawn and stretch out my arm to wrap around her shoulders trick when Silas appeared and squeezed in between us. I glared at him and through gritted teeth asked him what he wanted. He just shrugged and said, Edward, I'm bored of that game now. I want ice cream. Ellie laughed, then led him off to get some. What? How dare that little dweeb ruin my smooth moves? What a buzzkill! I needed to come up with a new trick to handle this annoying kid. So, the next morning, I told Silas that if he wanted to download a new game of his choice, he needed to go into the field and find a corn cob with exactly 200 seeds on it. He looked like he was going to cry, but he went off to the field. Oh, how smart I am, sending my little brother on a wild goose chase. I expected him to give up after a few hours, but nope. He was out there searching for it all day. He even managed to drag Carl along to help him. In the end, he still had to leave empty-handed. Anyway, I have to thank my stupid brother for helping me to have such a good afternoon with Ellie. That night, we all sat together in the living room and told creepy ghost stories. I hoped Ellie would freak out so much she nestled into my lap for protection. So I told him about the empty house up the road, which was also our family's property. My grandparents used to live there, but now it had been abandoned for over 40 years. There were plenty of rumors about it being haunted. One farmer said he saw a ghostly woman by the window, but she vanished into thin air. And someone else said they saw a spooky figure float out of the house and chase after them. Ellie chuckled, then said, Ooh, spooky. We should go and check it out. What? This wasn't what I had in mind. In fact, she didn't seem afraid at all. I didn't want to go in there. It was old and creepy, and just thinking about it freaked me out. Luckily for me, Silas strongly discouraged us by saying that he had heard someone crying in that house, and our parents didn't allow us to go there. And then, from nowhere, I felt the chilly wind blow over me with a whistle, which made my hair stand on end. And boom! The lights went out, leaving the whole room in darkness. Everyone was confused. What on earth was going on? I didn't want to die now, not when I haven't even told my crush my feelings yet. I was lost in terrifying thoughts when the lights came back on, and everyone else immediately bursted out laughing. OMG, I found myself sitting on Ellie's lap with my head between my hands. It turns out that my evil little brother was the one who turned the lights off as a prank. How humiliating. Oh well, at least Ellie changed her mind about wanting to check the house out. But then, over the next few days, weird things started happening. I went to grab a snack for my secret loot under my bed, but what's this? All of the Snickers bars had gone. It couldn't have been Silas, as he hated Snickers bars, right? Then we were watching a movie. Ellie started shivering, so being the awesome guy I am, I went to get a blanket for her, but... Huh? All of the blankets had gone? When I went back and told Carl and Ellie about it, Ellie said that was odd, as the other day she couldn't find her pajamas, and Carl's pack of Gatorade had vanished too. So, is there a real ghost in my house? As for my bro, he was acting like he was haunted. He barely talked anymore, and for 3 days in a row, at 6 p.m. on the dot, he disappeared out of the house for hours. This was so strange. I mean, that's the time slot for his favorite show, and he seriously wouldn't miss Adventure Time without a good reason. For me, it's great that Silas isn't at home, but since I'm the older brother, I still have to keep an eye on him, as Mom and Dad wouldn't have been best impressed if I'd lost him or something. That night, he mysteriously disappeared again. I was quite curious, so I went to look for Silas but couldn't find him anywhere. Panicked, I raced around the garden calling out his name. Finally, I felt a hand pounding on my shoulder. My heart was in my mouth. I turned around to see Silas standing there sweating. I shouted at him, "You can't just run off without saying a word. Where have you been?" But Silas calmly replied, "So what? It's my business, not yours." Then he ran straight inside. He gotta be kidding me. Okay, then if secrecy was the game he wanted to play, then I wouldn't mind being the detective either. I had to figure this out. So I gathered Ellie and Carl and came up with a genius plan. The next day at lunch, as planned, Silas entered the kitchen and everything was set. I placed an eye-catching candy-filled jar on the table, and as expected, Silas immediately picked up a handful and put them right in his mouth. Oh, just look at his happy face. He had no idea what I had in store for him. Right after that, we entered the room. Not wanting to get caught eating food on the sly, Silas quickly hid under the table. And of course, we pretended not to know he was there. Then I held up that candy jar and said, "Guys, guess what? I've ordered these pills online. It's the legendary invisible candy that makes it impossible for people to see me." Carl acted surprised. "Unbelievable! How did you get this? I heard it's such a hit that it was sold out everywhere." Then Ellie asked me how long we could disappear if we ate these candies. I replied, "I think if we just eat 4 to 5 candies, we can disappear for 45 minutes. We continued our skit, then I said I had to leave the candy jar here. So tomorrow we can try it and go out pranking everyone with our new superpower. I winked and everyone nodded. Now, where did Silas go again? I asked, and everyone shook their heads. Then I picked up an apple and purposely dropped it on the floor, then immediately peered underneath the table to look for it while pretending not to see Silas down there. He looked absolutely amazed, trying not to make any sound. Now Silas thought he was truly invisible. He crawled out, then did all sorts of funny things in front of us, from dancing, shaking his butt, and cartwheeling across the room. It was so hard to keep a straight face and ignore his existence. Then, at 6 p.m., Silas left the house with a backpack on. But because he thought he was invisible, he ran straight past us without hesitation, and didn't forget to stick his tongue out at me before leaving. This idiot. We followed him, and guess what? He went to the abandoned house. We hid behind a tree to watch, and suddenly the door creaked open. I was a little creeped out, so I clung to Ellie's arm. Someone ran over to him. A little girl. Oh no, was it a ghost? Ellie said, "OMG, she's in my clothes!" I looked closer and realized she wasn't a ghost, but in fact, was a real-life girl. So Silas hid that little girl in our abandoned house, and that's why he kept telling us over and over again not to come here. Since Silas thought that he was invisible, he kept running around her saying, "You can't see me, right?" He looked so funny as the little girl was too bewildered to understand anything. And right then we barged in shouting, "Gotcha!" Well, well, well. Look who's the big guy hiding his girlfriend here. I pulled out Silas's backpack, which was filled with Snickers bars and other missing items. Silas was shocked and sputtered, It's not what you think." The little girl burst into tears and said, "I'm Sally. I got lost, so Silas helped me." Silas said that he had met Sally one day on the cornfield. She was alone and hungry, so he brought her here and took care of her. He didn't dare tell us because he was afraid that we would make fun of him. Oh, I didn't think that my usual foolish brother was able to do such a good thing. So I hugged them and said, "I don't blame anyone, Silas. You did a very good job, and Sally, you will be safe here. Take her to our house and I will call someone for help." Fortunately, the police said that they were also looking for a missing child, and the next day, Sally was reunited with her parents. It turned out she was at a crowded train station when she ended up lost. Confused, she followed a man with the same shirt as her father, and that's how she ended up lost in our fields. Yeah, my brother is a bit annoying at times, but he's a good kid with a kind heart. Since then, we've grown closer, and I used my savings to reward my brother with a console of his very own. As for me and Ellie, well, let's just say our relationship is still in the friend zone for now. But Carl might have noticed something, and he didn't seem to oppose it. So just give me time and wish me luck.
Hi, Jared here. I just had a narrow escape from death, as my friend had tried to cut my abdomen open and take things in my belly. You can see that I'm still alive to tell you this story, but honestly, it took time for me to feel all there again. I'm not sure if I'm introverted or extroverted. I love making friends, but I do it much better through social media. As you can see, I was scrolling my newsfeed and dropped likes instead of hanging out on the weekend. That was when a post on my favorite travel page caught my eyes. Some girl raised her point of how stupid and reckless people were, thinking they were cool and somehow better than others to go backpacking solo, and added that they better save money and be more responsible by experiencing package tours. Oh yeah? She's a package tour seller or what? I immediately jumped to comment, which I would never do in real life, telling how short-sighted, childish, cowardliness, and poor she was. Of course, my words hit likes. Then a guy even sent me a friend request and started chatting with me about his same feelings, and right away we hit it off. His name was Travis, a 31-year-old guy living in the Northwest, close to Portland. Pretty soon we were chatting every day. I always found the best secret camping spots in my home of Arizona, and he also shared his tons of experiences of camping, trekking, and solo adventuring. So crazy! This could be a Netflix new series, How I Met My Soulmate. As summer vacation was coming up, Travis invited me to Oregon a number of times, but I still hesitated to put Portland in my summer bucket list. My final summer as a student must be an unforgettable experience. Travis got my mind and said he was organizing a small music festival with some friends up in Portland, and he'd love for me to join. Seeing as I played guitar, I jumped at the chance and said yes, without even thinking about it. Could it get even cooler? Yes! The festival was going to finance my whole journey. It's a hell of a risk. You don't even know this guy. What kind of online friend who pays for your plane ticket and your hotel and even all your food? Is he interested in you in that way? Oh man, my old, boring, skeptical parents could never see the bright side of this world. I'm 17, and I was absolutely not that dumb. When I was walking out of the Portland airport terminal, I could recognize Travis right away. He and the girl he was holding must be his little daughter, Anna. They were both waving at me excitedly, and my heart melted for this cute moment. We greeted each other like we were old friends, and his daughter couldn't stop chatting to me. I instantly felt more at ease. They would make my experience memorable. Along the way to the city, Travis told me a lot about the upcoming festival, and despite my best efforts not to show my naivety, I couldn't control my childish excitement. Wow, Travis, the show's gonna be epic. My parents can finally see how amazing I am. Oh, Anna, are you excited to see your hero daddy burning the stage tomorrow? Right away, I could see her sad eyes. I can't be there. You have an important appointment with your doctor, don't you remember? Travis then turned to me. Anna has kidney disease, so the place is too dangerous for her. Oh, Jared, don't let it affect your mood. Tomorrow will tell if she can have a kidney transplant. Wish you the best, I said. I will play for her tomorrow. Travis dropped me at my hotel and said he'd come back to pick me up at 7 p.m. for dinner. I had the whole day, but not wanting time to rest, I immediately went out to explore. I went straight to the Portland Japanese Garden, which was incredible. Then I went to the Portland Zoo. Afterwards, I popped into the souvenir shop at the zoo and got my parents a gift. I saw a small vase that I knew my mom would love, but as I reached out for it, someone else was going for it too on the other side of the shelf. I looked up and was surprised to see a gorgeous girl standing there. Unfortunately, that vase was one of a kind. How ironic. Yet I still gave it to her because, what can I say? I'm a gentleman. However, once I'd left the shop, she came running after me. Hey, wait, I have something for you. I turned around, and to my surprise, she handed me the vase. I guess you're a tourist, aren't you? Please keep it. I can easily find the other one for me. Aw, what a sweet girl. Really? I can't be more grateful. Would you like to join me for, a coffee? I'd love to. Sorry, but I have to get back to work. Hope you have a great time in Portland. She ran away before I could say goodbye. Wow, Portland locals are the best. Then I thought maybe I'd even go to college in Portland instead of Arizona. I loved it here. After that, I went back to the hotel to get ready. And at 7 p.m. on the dot, Travis picked me up and we went to a buffet restaurant. Before getting our table, Travis asked me if I'd like a drink, and said the ginger beer was great. Sure, why not? I said I'd have one of those, and he went off to the bar. He was right. It was great. And so was the food. It was delicious. And I must have eaten about 4 platefuls before I suddenly felt a bit sick. Oh, something's not right. I looked down and realized there was a shrimp in one of the salads. Oh no, I had a shrimp allergy. Without saying anything, I jumped up, ran to the toilet, and tried to throw up all the food and ginger beer. I was glad this was a buffet restaurant with unlimited food, so I could have a fresh start. Getting back to the table, I could see Travis was nervously peering over me. I was about to come to him and say I was fine, but suddenly my head was dizzy. I fell onto the floor, and then everything just went black. When I opened my eyes, there was a bright light shining directly onto me. Huh? Where was I? I tried to get up, but realized I couldn't. Oh my God, my limbs were tied to the bed. Was this even called a bed? I looked around, but I couldn't see anyone. That's when I realized I was in some kind of operating room. Although it was too dirty to be a hospital. There were some ancient-looking instruments on a dusty shelf. Everything looked old and rusted. I had to get out of there. I tried to wiggle my feet, but they were tied up too tight. Who had done this? Suddenly, someone walked into the room. It was Travis. Walking behind him were 2 other guys wearing surgical clothes. Travis, what's going on? I'm totally fine, just a normal allergic reaction. Let me out. Travis looked surprised to see me awake. Oh, I thought you'd be out cold for hours. I should have given you more anesthetic in that ginger beer. Then he turned to the doctor-looking guy and said, Chad, give him more anesthetic, would you? Wait, what do you want? You can have all my money and stuff. I won't tell anyone. He started walking toward me with a sinister grin on his face. You shouldn't have woken up yet. Since you've seen us, there's only one way to clean up the mess. He reached out to me with a syringe and I started screaming, Let me go! Let me go! But he was obviously not about to stop. Come on, or you want to see your belly being disemboweled? What? So they were trying to rip open my belly? Gutting me like a fish? I tried to struggle so he couldn't inject. The iron bed was shaking hard. Yes, till my last breath. Suddenly the door burst out and the police rushed in. Was this just a flash before I died? Stop, you're under arrest! Their shouting brought me back to reality. They grabbed Travis and the other 2 doctor guys and handcuffed them, while another untied me. I was taken outside, and they helped me into a police car. My soul hadn't been back to my body yet, but when I looked to my left, I panicked. The girl from the souvenir shop was sitting next to me. Oh my mother, what are you doing here? She put her hand on my arm and said, A horrible night, isn't it? I'm actually an undercover cop, and I've been investigating an organ trafficking line. That guy Travis, who has pretended to be your friend, is actually part of the line. Not everyone was as lucky as you, Jared. So many teenagers has been set up. Then she told me what happened. Turns out she followed Travis and was surprised to see him picking me up and went to the restaurant. She followed Travis when he went to the bar and saw him drop something into my drink. That's when I saw you'd fainted. Everyone gathered around, but Travis said you were just drunk and took you away. I followed him and called the police, she said. Oh no, what the hell was I stuck in? This is insane. I could have lost my kidneys or something. I'd even have died. Yes, we might not have made it without your own strong effort to lengthen the time. But how come you didn't feel the effects of the anesthetic? She asked. I thought back and realized. And oh, I had to laugh. It was the shrimp who saved me. I'd made myself throw up and vomited most of the anesthetic. If it hadn't been for the shrimp, who knows what might have happened. I don't even want to think about it. What a close shave. Not in a million years did I ever think I'd get mixed up in something dangerous like this. This time I will let my skeptical mom and dad say, I told you 1,000,000 times. We have to be careful, especially when it comes to our kidneys. Maybe package tours aren't so bad after all, right?
Nina, why are you just my cousin and not my mommy? Claudia peered up at me with curious eyes. I knew where this had come from, as the topic of the week at kindergarten was family. Claudia's innocent words made me squirm with guilt. Was I a bad person? I'd been asking myself this daily for the last 4 years. Yep, the little girl next to me wasn't my daughter. I stole her from her real dad and have been raising her single-handedly ever since. It all started with my Uncle Oliver, who is a successful businessman and a super loving person. I owe a lot to him and to my grandma, as they're the ones who raised me after my parents died in a car crash when I was just a little girl. My uncle had been doing a great job filling up the missing father figure in my life. But he also wanted a biological child of his own, which was quite a tricky problem to an asexual man like him. One evening, I just got in from hanging out with my friends when I saw him sitting at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. I asked, "Uncle, what's up?" He looked at me with swollen red eyes, sighed, then said, "Nina, it's silly, really. It's just my birthday is next month, and I don't have the one thing I want the most in the world." I pulled him into a hug and comforted him. I knew he's still longing for a kid, and I wanted to help him. So, together, we looked into the surrogacy process. My uncle was so excited, and he did all the paperwork to buy a donor egg. Now, all he needed was a surrogate mother. So he went through his local surrogacy agency, and they presented him with 5 potential surrogate profiles. I swear he must have reread each of them about 100 times. But he eventually chose one, a woman called Kathy. On paper, Kathy sounded perfect. She was a 31-year-old who already had a healthy little boy called Robbie. A contract was drawn up. All Kathy's medical care would be paid for, and she'd also receive a pretty large sum of money. Then, when the baby was 1 week old, my uncle would raise them alone. This all sounds perfect, huh? Well, it soon took a turn for the worst. Once Kathy fell pregnant, Uncle Oliver wanted to be around her more so he could bond with the baby. One time I walked into the lounge to classical music playing, and my uncle pressing his head to Kathy's belly to see if the baby could hear the music. Soon coming home to find Kathy there became the norm for me. At first I didn't mind, as she was always really sweet to me, and we even had small talks from time to time. But then, one morning when I was heading downstairs to go to work, I spotted her standing in the yard helping my grandma water the flowers. I was about to walk over to greet them, then I heard her say, "Oliver is such a lovely man, but he's so busy. I worry he'll find it all a bit too much juggling a newborn and work." Then Grandma said, "Don't worry, sweetie, as he'll have Nina and me around to help." But Nina is so young, and she has her own life to lead. She's always out at a party or with some boy, and you can't be expected to take care for a baby, not at your age. I just don't want a stranger caring for my baby, not when I could help out. What? Her sweet as sugar behavior was all an act, wasn't it? How dare she try and manipulate my lovely grandma? A few days later, I went down to dinner to see Kathy sitting there. She smiled at me and asked me about my day. I wasn't buying her overly nice act, but I went along with it anyway. At one point, she suddenly took her phone out, then her smile turned into a frown. "Oh, no. Robbie has a fever. I better go to him." She immediately pulled back her chair and stood up. "You know how it is. Only a mother's love can make a little one feel better." Then she left. Kathy's poisonous words had definitely got to Grandma, as she showed concern for Robbie and let out a gentle smile as her eyes followed Kathy's steps. And that was only the beginning. Kathy's game playing continued as a few days later, she showed up on our doorstep in tears. Then she came out with some story about how the venue for Robbie's birthday party had canceled and they refused to refund her. Like clockwork, my uncle told her she could have the party at ours and that he'd cover the costs. On the day of the party, I saw Kathy pass my uncle all of the receipts for the bouncy castle, magician, catering, etc. She gently pat her tummy and grinned. "You'll be such a wonderful father. You know, we could always have another one after this. For free, of course." Then, later on, I saw her whispering something to Robbie. Then the next minute, he ran over to my uncle. He hugged his legs and said, "Thank you for the party, Daddy." Then Kathy hurried over to him, ruffled his hair, and said, "Oh, honey, he's not your daddy, but it'd be nice, wouldn't it, to all live here together with the baby?" Enough was enough, so that night I confronted my uncle and Grandma about it. "I don't have a good feeling about Kathy. I think she's trying to break the contract." My uncle sighed, then said, "I know." Then Grandma added, "Kathy's right, though. Oliver can't do this alone. You're too young and I'm too old. So it makes sense for Kathy to stick around and help. Still better than having some random stranger around, right? I can help out, I raised my voice. Rather me than her. I don't trust her. Grandma shook her head. But she's the mother. She's carrying the baby. Their bond is undeniable. I know what it's like to lose people I love. Kathy will break this baby's heart. I'm sure of it. She's only out for herself. My face turned red as I raised my voice. My uncle remained silent. Then he just sighed and walked out of the room. I ran after him and pulled him back. Uncle, you made your choice right from the beginning. Why change it now? He replied with his eyes glued to the ground. Your grandma has a point. What? My voice was up to high pitch. Stop letting that witch Kathy manipulate you. He shook his head, then walked away. Oh my God. They were being controlled like puppets. This needed to stop. So I decided to confront Kathy about it. My chance arrived the next day. She was helping to cook dinner, so I said to her, I know what you're up to. You just want an easy life without any money worries. That's why you're manipulating them. But you can't fool me. She stopped chopping the carrots, then looked at me. Is that so? The thing is, Nina, I always get what I want. She gave me an evil smirk. Then she slammed the knife into the carrot with such ferocity that I flinched. It was official. Kathy was crazy, but I didn't have any proof. So basically, there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. As expected, the craziness continued into the next day. I went to Grandma's room and saw her looking flustered as she searched through her bedside drawer. I, again, couldn't find my pills, and that they kept on showing up in strange places. She seemed really worried that she was losing her mind. Later on, when we were all eating dinner, Kathy went to the fridge, and surprise, surprise, guess what she found there? Yep, Grandma's pills. Obviously, Kathy had put them there. Then she walked over to Grandma, rubbed her shoulder, concernedly said, I should have taken care of you more. We should have you checked by the doctor as soon as possible. Age can be so cruel on the mind, and you don't want to be forgettable around the baby. After that, Grandma seemed totally convinced that she was too old to take care for a baby, even after the doctor told her she was fine. Furthermore, she was adamant that Kathy should move in to help out. Ugh, what a snake Kathy was. A month later, the baby was born. A girl. My uncle named her Claudia, after my mom. We all cried happy tears and welcomed her into our family. Kathy got her wish, and both her and Robbie moved into our house. One morning, I came downstairs to see Kathy holding the baby. In front of her was the ripped-up contract. I told her to leave, and she smirked and said, You're a smart girl, Nina, but you're no match for me. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home now, so get used to it. I knew there was no point telling my uncle and grandma about this. I couldn't let this woman destroy my family. She was dangerous. She could end up hurting everyone. She'd never stop until she got what she wanted, and there's no way I could let that happen. So, when Kathy was in the bathroom, I picked Claudia up, and before I could stop myself, I was fleeing from the house and out of their lives. I moved to a new town and got a new job. It was only meant to be temporary, but I guess I was too selfish and afraid to go back. I'd always been truthful with Claudia about one thing, that I was her cousin, not her mom. So, when Claudia said the words, Nina, why are you just my cousin and not my mommy? I felt so guilty. She was missing out on a relationship with her father because of me. Yes, I'd wanted my family to get out of Kathy's trap, but what I did wasn't fair to my uncle. I knew that now. I had no right taking his daughter away from him for 4 years. I felt so awful. Thinking about the distress I must have caused him and Grandma, the guilt was eating me up, and I knew I couldn't carry on like this anymore. So I called up an old family friend and asked him to approach my uncle. Later that day, my friend got back to me with a message from him. Kathy's gone, and she won't be coming back. You were right about her. Of course. She was only after my money. After you left, she didn't seem to care about Claudia at all, and she threatened to go to the cops and report you unless I paid her off. Please, Just come back to me and Grandma. We sure aren't happy with what you did, but we know you had good intentions. We love you, and we just want our girls back home." Tears streamed down my face. They'd found it in their hearts to forgive me. Running away had never been the answer, even if I'd done it with good intentions. It was time to stop running. It was time to go home. So I peered down at the little girl who reminded me so much of my uncle. "Claudia?" I took her hand. "Are you ready to go home to Daddy?"
Hey, kid. Why are you here alone? What's your name? I first noticed this little girl when I discovered this epic pastry shop near my school. She'd always be sitting in the alleyway nearby, wearing the same clothes over and over again, clutching a teddy bear in her arms. She looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes and answered timidly, I'm Alex. Then she started crying quietly and said, "My mom and dad are always working, so I wait for them here. Sometimes they're gone for days." Oh, this poor little girl. She must have been starving, as she kept eyeing my bag of croissants. I gave her one, and she said chocolate croissants were her favorite. Wow, just like me. No wonder I'd felt drawn to this little girl. She ate it so fast, and I told her I'd go buy her another one, and I'd be right back. I couldn't bear to see her so hungry. How could her parents just leave her like that? I ran as fast as I could, but when I got back to the alleyway, she was gone. How weird. I couldn't see her anywhere. I walked home, and that night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Had her parents come to pick her up? The next day, I went back to the pastry shop, and before I even got there, I heard some kids shouting. I tried to take a closer look, and there Alex was, huddled on the ground while the kids threw her teddy bear around. Oh no, she was crying. This made me so angry, so I charged towards them. "Hey! Leave her alone right now, or you'll have me to deal with!" The bullies immediately ran off. I rushed over and put my arm around Alex. She wiped tears from her eyes and said, "Thank you. Other than my teddy, you're the only one who wants to be my friend." I swear the lump in my throat couldn't get any bigger. Then I asked her what happened. She told me how she skipped school because she was bullied for wearing old, smelly clothes. Even the teachers were mean to her, she said. Oh gosh, my heart. I couldn't bear this, so I held out my hand. "Alex, I can't leave you out here like this. I've always wanted a little sister. So what do you say? I promise I'll protect you." Alex squeezed my hand, which I took as a yes, and then we got up and she asked if she could show me something. It was a playground that she used to go to, and as soon as I saw it, I felt something well up inside me. It looked so familiar. We played on the jungle gym and the swings, and they even had a big slide that was so fun to play on. We played for hours, and it felt like I'd gone back in time to my childhood. Well, if only I could actually remember my childhood. As far as I know, when I was just 8 years old, I had a big accident. It gave me a major head injury and wiped my memory completely. Ever since then, I've been going to therapy and taking medication. But it's so weird not being able to remember anything from before. I try to focus on the present, though, and I know I'm lucky to even be alive. However, sometimes the migraines from the accident get really bad, and that's exactly what happened when we were on the swings. One minute, I was looking at the clouds and laughing. The next, I felt myself slipping off the swing and landing on the ground. The last thing I saw was Alex running towards me. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed, and my parents were there holding my hands. Recently, my migraines had been getting more frequent, and it really worried my mom and dad. My first thought was, where's Alex? I asked my parents if they'd seen an 8-year-old girl, but they looked confused. I realized she'd probably been scared and run off. She was constantly on my mind, though, so as soon as I got out of the hospital a few days later, I went to find her again. She was nowhere to be seen, but there was a fire in my heart that kept urging me to find her, so I couldn't give up. I had to find her. I ran to the playground and was relieved to see her on the swings. She looked so sad, so I asked her what was up, and she burst into tears and she said, "My family, they lost everything. A gang came to our house and stole everything we own." Even I started crying after hearing that. How could people be so cruel? She then told me she hadn't eaten for days, as her parents now had no money to buy her food. Luckily, I had just bought some chocolate croissants, and she gobbled them both. Meanwhile, my mind was cluttered with thoughts of helping Alex. My savings were barely enough to support her, but maybe my parents could help? They donated to a church in town, so I'm sure they'd be happy to help Alex. I quickly called my mom, and she said she'd love to meet Alex and see what they could do. So I happily told Alex the good news, and we walked straight to my house. I gave her some more food, and we sat on the couch to wait for my parents. Seeing her bright face made me feel so happy. As soon as I heard their car pull up, I ran to the door and said, "Mom, Dad, Alex is here." My parents came in and looked around the room. Then my dad said, "Sweetie, where is she?" I pointed to the sofa and said, "She was just there." Then I called her name, but she didn't reply. I didn't get it. Where was she? My mom looked worried and said, "Is she too shy? Are you sure she was with you, honey?" I frantically checked the whole house, but she was nowhere to be found. I was starting to panic now, but my dad held me and said, "Alice, sweetie, calm down. Maybe you just need a rest." Then I heard my mom whispering to him, "The severe migraines probably have drained her out again. Get her upstairs. I'll call the doctor to ask about hallucinations." "I'm not hallucinating! She's real! Why don't you believe me?" I screamed out while trying to break away from my dad's arms. I was feeling dizzy by this point. My head was pounding, and the next moment, everything went dark again. I ended up in hospital again, for the second time that week. Wow, that was a new record. I was lying there pretending to still be unconscious to eavesdrop on my parents chatting to the doctor. "Alice has been acting a little strange. She keeps mentioning a homeless girl, and it sounds quite similar to her childhood. Today, she even said she brought her home to meet us. But we can't find her anywhere. And I don't think she even exists," my mom said. The doctor then said, "It's possible that this little girl is actually Alice's lost memories. Sometimes after therapy and medication, old memories can start resurfacing. Maybe this little girl was someone from Alice's childhood, a friend or something." What? This was crazy. Was Alex from my childhood? I didn't understand. I sat bolt upright and stuttered, Are you hiding something from me?" I could tell right away they were, because my parents looked panicked, and my mom said, "Listen, sweetie, it's been a long day for you. Now isn't the right time for this story. But I'll tell you tomorrow, okay?" The next day, my parents drove me to the church that they donate to every year. I was so confused and kept asking them who Alex was. Eventually, a nun appeared, and we all sat down in a little room on the 3rd floor. Then the secrets came pouring out. My parents weren't my real parents. After I had the accident, my parents adopted me from the church. They'd picked me up at the hospital right after I recovered and didn't tell me what happened because they didn't want to make my life any harder. They just wanted me to be happy. I couldn't believe it. Then the nun asked me to explain what had been happening recently, and I told her about Alex. As soon as I said her name, the nun looked shocked and quickly pulled out a photo album. She showed me a photo of 2 twin girls and said, "This is you, Alice, holding the teddy bear. And next to you is your twin sister. Her name is Alex." Suddenly, the room was spinning. This was all too much. I had a twin sister? Before I even had time to ask anything, the nun took my hand and led me over to a big window near the stairs. Through her words, all the past memories came rushing back to me. My biological parents had brought me and Alex to the church because they couldn't afford to raise us. No families wanted to adopt both of us, so the nun told us we would be separated. This was the most painful news we'd ever heard. So that night, we decided to escape together. I gave Alex my teddy bear to hold so that I could climb out the window first. But unfortunately, I slipped and fell from such a height that I'm lucky I even survived. That's what wiped all my memories. I stared at the window as the nun told me all of this. This was insane! How many secrets had been hidden from me all this time? So, where is Alex now? I asked, tears rolling down my cheeks. Turns out, Alex had been adopted by another family, but the nuns had lost contact with her because the family had moved overseas. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I had to see my sister. But how could I find her without any information? I started to search social media like crazy, but nothing came up. I wouldn't give up hope, though. I updated my journey finding Alex every day on a personal blog. Not one night I went to sleep without thinking about her and wondering how she was doing. Fortunately, people on the internet actually showed a lot of interest and support for my story. It got passed around, but so far, there still wasn't any hint about Alex. Even the illusion of baby Alex wouldn't show up anymore, ever since the day I heard the truth. But I knew in my bones that we would find our way back to each other again somehow. And then, one morning, I woke up from a strange dream with another migraine, so I decided to take a walk and get some fresh air, and drop by the pastry shop for breakfast. I glanced over to the alley as usual, and I saw myself pacing around with a teddy bear in hand, looking kind of lost. Sounds like I'd lost the plot, right? Well, I hadn't, because it actually was Alex. We were frozen for like a whole minute when our eyes met. Then, without a single word being said, we just ran into each other's arms in tears. So, long story short, Alex had moved to France since 10, and ever since then, she'd also been trying to find me. Thanks to a post on Twitter, she realized I was still here, and so she applied for a scholarship to America so she could find me. And, well, there she was, standing right in front of me. Words can't express how unreal it still was to look at her every time. Oh, don't worry. Everyone, including my parents, have confirmed she's an actual person, not another product of my imagination. Thank God. I can't believe the crazy roller coaster ride that my life has been on for the past months. From that moment on, we were inseparable. And now we're planning on moving in together. The only thing left for us to do is to find our biological parents. Alex remembers them clearly, so she's been filling me in on the first 8 years of our life together. Wish us luck! I was standing outside of college chatting to my friends when suddenly a police car pulled up, and from the car's window, a handsome police officer waved at me, then told me to hurry up. I excitedly waved back at him, said goodbye to my friends, and rushed to him in front of their admiring eyes. So, I'm Daisy, and the handsome cop is Levi, my amazing, brave boyfriend. We first met at the library in town. I was there for my studies, and he was looking for some crime books. We started dating, and now a year later, we're madly in love. There are so many things that I love about dating a cop, such as seeing him in his uniform. It never fails to make me beam with pride. And I'm not gonna lie, he has abs of steel due to all of his workouts. Swoon! Besides, he has the cutest quirky habits. Like, when we go to a restaurant or the theater, he always scans it first to check if it's safe. But as good as being with him is, there are a few bum points, such as his unpredictable work schedule. Day, night, weekends, You name it, he works it. Then, when we finally managed to plan something, he sometimes got an emergency phone call and had to bail on me. This sucked, especially when it was my sister's wedding. But without a doubt, the most annoying thing of all is his popularity with other girls. They're like moths to a flame around him, especially this one colleague of his, Ellie. One time, Levi brought his colleague Brad over while I was there studying. I heard Brad remark, "Levi, I never thought you'd end up with a bookworm. I thought you'd end up with Ellie. Everyone can see you two have a strong connection." Levi tried laughing it off and saying that it was nonsense, but the jealousy rose up in me. By the time Brad left, I was really upset about it, so I packed up my books and went to leave. He stopped me and asked me what was wrong. Trying my best not to cry, I blurted out, "Why aren't you with Ellie? You spend all your time with her." He shook his head, smirked, then said, "Ignore Brad. He's a joker. And yeah, I spend time with Ellie. I work with her. But it's you I love, and everyone knows it. In fact, why don't you move in? Then we can spend more time together." My sadness was soon overlapped by happiness, and I jumped into his arms and squealed out, "Really? Yes, for sure!" This was so exciting. I moved in a few weeks later, and at first, living with Levi was the best thing ever. But over time, there were little niggling things that started to play on my mind. For example, one day I was chatting to the new neighbor when Levi arrived home and in a stone-cold voice demanded I go inside. Then he sternly told me never to talk to strangers. But come on, I'm a naturally chatty, friendly girl who loves talking to people and making new friends. I don't know, I guess it was me overreacting? I mean, he was just looking out for me, right? But then his need for control worsened when once I arranged to meet my friends in town. Levi was going to come too, but then he had a last-minute work call and couldn't. When I said I'd just get a taxi, he freaked out and told me I couldn't go. After I got upset about it, he reluctantly agreed to let me go. He called a reputable taxi firm to pick me up, then told me I had to be back by 10 p.m. But after a few drinks, I lost all sense of time. I was just having too much fun. I was dancing with my friend when Levi stormed in, grabbed my arm, and pulled me out of there. Everyone was staring at us, not helped because he was in his cop uniform. I even heard one man tut out, "It's always the innocent-looking ones, isn't it?" It was so embarrassing. At home, I sat there brooding while he got me a glass of water. When he tried passing it to me, I jumped up to my feet and screamed at him, "You're being ridiculous, and thanks to you, everyone in the bar thinks I'm some sort of criminal. I don't need a curfew." "It's not like that," he sighed. But I was so upset, I brushed past him and slammed the bedroom door behind me. I cried myself to sleep. I hated arguing with him. I gave him silent treatment throughout the next day. But then in the evening, he arrived home with a gift box and apologized for making me sad. That was so sweet. I gave him a hug and said, "I'm sorry too." Then I opened the box. It was a really lovely watch. I noticed that it had an extra button on it, but I didn't think much of it. I stared down at it admirably as he fixed it on my wrist. That's how caring my boyfriend was. So I decided to buy him something too. The next day after college, I went to the mall. Suddenly, Levi called me and asked me where I was. I wanted the gift to be a surprise, so I told him I was at home. Crossly, he said, "Daisy, don't lie to me. I know you're at High Hill Shopping Mall. Come home at once." Huh? How did he know that? I gave up on finding a gift and went home. When he got back, I asked him how he knew where I was, and I saw him briefly glance at my watch. Then, he admitted that he had GPS fitted to it, but it was only so he could keep me safe. What? I wasn't a kid anymore. How could he use it to follow me? We had a huge fight, and I told him he was controlling and crazy, and he needed to stop treating me like a little kid. Then I shut myself away in the bedroom. The next day, when I woke up, Levi had already left for work. I was so wound up, so I decided to go for a jog to clear my head. Obviously, I left the watch at home, and also my phone. When I got back, I was about to head for the shower when I heard my phone ringing. It was Levi. Then I noticed that I had 50 missed calls and a ton of messages from him. What? This wasn't normal. I'd only been gone for an hour at the most. Anyways, I put the watch back on, then suddenly the door banged open and Levi stormed in, and he yelled at me, "Are you okay? Where did you go? Why didn't you answer my calls?" This sucked, as I love him, but I knew I couldn't live like this anymore. So I told him I needed my freedom, then headed for the door. He looked so mad as he grabbed my hand, pulled me into the upstairs room, then locked me inside. I banged on the door and pleaded with him to let me out. "Daisy, trust me. This is for your own good. You're not safe out there." Then I heard his footsteps trail off and knew he'd left. I curled up into a ball and cried myself to sleep. When I woke up, it was getting pretty dark out there. I searched the room for something to help me and found a rope ladder. The perks of living with a prepared cop. I used it to climb out of the window, but as soon as I reached the ground, 2 men appeared. Then suddenly, the world turned black. When I opened my eyes, I realized that I was in a dark, damp room and I was tied up. The 2 men were sitting by the door and talking to each other. I began to panic. I'd seen enough movies to know that this was bad. One of the men looked over at me, and I quickly closed my eyes. But it was too late. He'd seen I was awake, so he walked over and said, "Ah, welcome back, sweetheart." Panicked, I asked, "Who are you? Why me?" He sniggered out, "Ah, yes. If only that boyfriend of yours was here, then we could ask him." Then he picked up his phone, and seconds later, I heard Levi's voice in the other line. "Hello? Remember me? We seem to have something of yours." I heard the fear in Levi's voice. "Let her go! Your wife's death wasn't her fault. It's your fault she's dead. Now it's your turn to lose the woman you love. Come here alone if you want to see her face again. And don't even think about calling for backup." He hung up the phone, then peered down at me before he kicked the empty barrel next to me. I jolted back, and he laughed. It was terrifying. Not long after that, they dragged a beaten-up man into the room. "Levi! Oh no!" Levi managed to look at me, forced a smile, and slurred out, "My flower girl. Don't worry, I'm here now." The gang laughed at this. Then he stopped in front of Levi and said, "I think you and me need a little chat. Let's call it man business." I knew I needed to find a way to help him. But what? That's when I looked down at my watch. It already had GPS, so perhaps the extra button did something. I struggled to press it, which wasn't easy with roped hands, trust me. But eventually I managed to. By this point, Levi was unconscious, and I started sobbing. I didn't want to lose him. Not like this. The one man set something up next to him. "Oh no, it was a bomb!" He sneered out. "You have 30 minutes left to say goodbye to your lover, boy." Then the man left. I called Levi's name and sobbed out how I loved him. I honestly thought we were both going to die there. And watching the timer count down to our doom was the worst feeling ever. Suddenly, the door burst open. At first, I thought it was those men back again. But instead, Brad and his team rushed over, saw the bomb, then quickly got both me and Levi out of there. I was pushed to the ground just before there was a big bang, and the house exploded. On the way to the hospital, Ellie explained everything to me. So, turns out this involved a difficult criminal case that happened last year. Levi had been investigating a group of drug dealers, but an incident happened, and the gang's leader's wife accidentally fell from the building and died. They arrested most of the dealers, but some got away, including the gang leader. Then recently, Levi had received images of me outside college, and our house from them, and took this as a threat to my safety. Well, that explained all of Levi's controlling and weird behavior. I felt so bad for misjudging Levi. He was the sweetest, bravest man, and I loved him so much. I stayed by his side as he recovered in hospital. Then one day, he finally opened his eyes, looked at me, and muttered out, "There's my flower girl." I hugged him, gently, of course. It was such a relief to know he was going to be okay. The gang is still out there somewhere, but hopefully they'll catch them soon. I do worry about it, but it's okay, as I know I have Levi to protect me. After all, he's my real-life action hero, and I know that with him by my side, we'll get through anything.
Finally, I'm out of that morbid place. Now let me tell you, sharing a cell with a dozen other noisy, stinky, grumpy dudes ain't fun. Anyway, here I am, free as a bird now. So no one's here to pick me up. Suppose I'd have to call Mom. It took me a few seconds to familiarize myself with my phone. Jeez, it'd been 4 years. It was a miracle I hadn't turned into one of those leg-cradling crazy dudes. How I ended up in there in the first place was a joke. All I did was take some stuff from 1 or 2 warehouses and sell them on. No big deal. Yo, Mom, it's your boy Cole. I'm out, and yeah, I need a lift home. I spoke the moment I heard Mom's voice. Cole, Do you have any idea what hell your actions have put your mother through? My dad was so good at overreacting, but I needed somewhere to stay, so I could handle him. But Dad, Mom, come on, I'm still your son. You have the heart to see me homeless and sleeping next to rats? There was a brief pause. Then Dad grunted, "You can stay for a few weeks, but only for your mother's sake." Thanks, Dad. You're the man. Bingo. My parents were like putty in my hands. This was the life. I played video games all day, then partied all night. Then one night, I was getting ready to meet my friend Moose, when Mom told me that the pizza delivery guy was at the door. I shouted down to her, "You can shout me this one, and I'll get the next." I finished getting ready, and I must say, I was looking smooth. I strode down into the kitchen and grabbed a slice of pizza. Dad was sitting there glaring at me over his report. "If you can't afford to pay for items, then I suggest you don't order them." He looked at the pizza slice in my hand. Mom walked up behind him and placed her hands on his shoulders. "Darling, give him some more time. He's still adjusting to outside life." "Thanks, Mom. You're the greatest." I gave her a greasy pizza kiss on the cheek. Any chance you can lend me some dough?" Dad shook his head and sighed, while Mom went over to her purse and passed me some money. Hey, there'd be plenty of time to get a job and be responsible. Right now, I had 4 years of lost time to make up for. Once, I borrowed Dad's car. I swear I only had a couple of beers, but the world glitched out and went all blurry. The next thing I know, I'd driven straight into the neighbor's front yard. Oops. I opened my eyes the next morning to a killer headache, so all I wanted was some black coffee and a plate full of bacon. But I got Dad's death stare instead. "Just when I think you can't get any more irresponsible, you took my car without asking, drank too much, then drove into Gloria's beloved rose bushes." "Chill out, Dad. I'll fix it later," I said as I raided the fridge for food. "You're not the one having to pay for the damages. We've made our decision. You have 1 week to get out of our house." Now hold up. I had 0 places to go. I couldn't stay with Moose, as he was crashing in his sister's garage, and I didn't know anyone else. How could they? I gotta chill a bit, so I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through dating apps. Then I matched with this stunning blonde called Trudy. She's a little older than me, but her family is rolling in dough, and also, she has her own business. Not only that, but she's hotter than an agitated dragon. So yeah, her photos seemed a little grainy, but guess the retro trend was in. Looks like I had it both ways, love and money. I have quite a face. But since I love beer and pizza, and without any dedication for the gym, I don't have the perfect body. But I needed to keep this girl interested. So I told her I was a tall dude with an impressive six-pack, who just graduated and was on the lookout for a girl with brains as well as beauty. This girl was actually pretty easy to talk to. She sent me pictures of her latest purchases, like phones, expensive watches, and designer clothes, along with the promise that when we started dating in person, she'd buy me whatever I wanted. Result: after 4 days of face pics and my priceless conversation, Trudy was smitten, and she sent me a message saying, "Cole, I haven't known you long, but I know how I feel. I love you. X." Okay, that's really fast, but yeah, I've won the lottery over here. Hey, maybe she lied about her look too, but it didn't matter. She's rich. So I replied to her, "I know, babes. I feel it too. X." We immediately arranged to meet in person and decided on a yellow dress code. I looked around the park trying to spot this gold mine, but all I could see was some old lady in a yellow dress. Okay, coincident, but why is she heading my way? The closer she got toward me, the wider her grin was. "Cole, right? It's me, Trudy." What? No. How come this corny, overweight, wrinkly old lady be Trudy? I was expecting the blonde beauty from the photos, not Big Bird. Once I got over the initial shock, we sat down and talked. Turns out my dream girl was in her 50s. All the descriptions and photos of her were true, but 30 years ago. She was clearly in the middle of a midlife crisis or something. "You're not the same either," she sneered. "You're barely taller than me. And where's the gym body?" All right, fair enough. I fake smiled. "Yeah, despite you looking different, I still find you very beautiful." That night, I tossed and turned. This was all so unexpected. Trudy was totally not my type. But dating her might not hurt. She was rich. And also, I had to move out tomorrow. So at least she'd pay for me. With that, I sent her a message. "Babe, you're beautiful, and I want to make us official. X." The next day, I moved in with Trudy. Now, let me tell you something. Her apartment was lavish. It was full of the latest tech. Crazy. Seeing as she was so old, she probably didn't know how to use them. She worked a lot, so most of the time I was home alone. And I was free to watch cartoons and movies, munch on potato chips, and play as many video games as I felt like. One time, I was watching a movie when the door opened. And in stepped this glary-eyed dude. I shouted at him, "Hey dude, you have the wrong apartment." He tutted and said, "I can assure you that I don't. I'm Alex, Trudy's son, and you must be Cole. I would say it's a pleasure to meet my mother's gold-digging boyfriend in the flesh, but unfortunately, it's not." What? Trudy has a son? And by the looks, he's even older than me. And how dare he called me a gold digger? I suppose I was, but still, he had no right to call me it. Even worse, he refused to leave. He just sat in the kitchen and waited for his mom to return. Then he had a heated argument with her in which he referred to me as a loser and a bum. Things weren't any better with my parents either. Dad told me to be independent and get a real job, not a sugar mama. And Mom was just crying. Whatever. This was their fault for kicking me out in the first place. What did they expect me to do? Live under a bridge? Few days after I met Alex, Trudy insisted on dragging me along to his lame work launch thing. As soon as I got there, I went straight to the food. I was stuffing a mini quiche into my mouth when this girl walked up alongside me and said, "Great minds think alike." I gave her a gormless look. Then she pointed at the food. We both headed straight for the food. I laughed at that. This girl was funny. And hot. Really hot. Her name is Beatrice, and she works for that loser Alex. After that, I started seeing a lot more of this Beatrice girl, as she often popped over with Alex. And while he was arguing with his mom, usually about me, I chatted to her. That was how I found out she wasn't having it easy either. She was behind on her rent because her truant brother had stolen the money and spent it all. I felt bad for her, so I took the envelope full of cash that Trudy had given to me, and I handed it to her. Okay, so I wouldn't be able to buy anything new for a few weeks, but it was worth it just to know that she'd be okay. Truth was, I was really falling for Beatrice, but I couldn't do anything about it, as I was with Trudy, and I was relying on her handouts. Soon, things became stinky. I came out of the shower to see Trudy standing there with my phone in her hand. How could you? She threw it at me. Yeah, so she'd read all of the messages I'd sent to Moose, saying how I didn't find her remotely attractive and I was only with her for a free ride. Trudes, my babes, come on, those messages were just me joking. I laughed. I was just messing around. Shut up, you liar! You find me hideous. Alex was right. You were only using me for my money. And worse, you never went to college. Instead, you were in jail. I was about to lay on the cold charm when Alex and Beatrice bursted into the room. Alex shouted at me, "How lowlife you are! What a shameless gold digger! It's appalling. I've told her to report you to the cops." Beatrice interrupted. "No, don't do that. What Cole did was wrong, but he's not all that bad. Please." I was so moved. Took a look around. Trudy was crying. Alex was so furious his eyes were bulging. And Beatrice, well, she just looked disappointed. I then packed my stuff and left in shame. Well, that was a few months ago, and I have a decent job now. Even though I live back at home, I pay my way, and I'm saving up to put a deposit down on my own place. I never should have used Trudy like that. She might be old, but she still has feelings, and the way I treated her wasn't right. I was undeniably a douchebag back then. All I want is to have a happy life with Beatrice. I really love her, which is why I asked her to be my girlfriend, but she rejected me. Man, it stung, but I'm not giving up. Perhaps she might give me a chance once she sees I've changed. I can't fix the past. All I can do now is improve myself and keep on rolling forward.
Ma'am, sorry to inform you of this, but according to our information, Bella Hiddleston was reported dead 2 months ago after disappearing in the forest, the secretary said. What? This couldn't be happening. But that's my name, and I'm clearly still alive. This was some sick mistake. I asked them to check again, but they kept saying the same thing. Had I been missing for so long that my family actually thought I'd died? The accident had been pretty crazy, so I was feeling confused. I mean, what had I been doing in a forest in Cambodia in the first place? I tried so hard to remember, but I couldn't recall anything. Luckily, some local villagers had found me in a trapping pit and helped me recover. Otherwise, I would have died. I then asked the people in the embassy to help me call my husband and sister. There had clearly been a big misunderstanding, and I wanted to fix this right away. God, the weight was killing me. The secretary tried, but she said, "Sorry, ma'am, we can't reach either of those numbers." This was unbelievable. I was stuck in a foreign country with no ID, no contact with relatives, and I'd been reported dead. But in a flash, I realized that I could borrow someone's phone to reach for my acquaintances via social media. So as soon as the secretary lended me hers, I went straight to my husband's profile. But I was so stunned, I almost dropped the phone when I saw his latest update. He'd just made an announcement that my funeral was taking place the following week. OMG! What was happening? How could this be real? I kept scrolling down his profile and saw my sister had posted an old selfie with him saying, "Ronnie, I know this is a tough time, but I'm always here for you. We'll get through this together." Hang on, what did she mean? Firstly, I wasn't actually dead. Hello? But also, I know my sister used to have feelings for Ronnie. Did she assume that she could just be with him now that she thought I was dead? What a traitor! We were so close. Surely she wouldn't treat me like this. I had to get home and sort this out once and for all. I asked the embassy to help me fly home without informing my family in advance. I wanted to surprise them. Believe it or not, the day I was due to arrive home was the day of my funeral. What a coincidence, right? I went directly to the funeral venue, in disguise, of course. I wore a huge black hat and sunglasses to hide my face and sat way at the back so no one would notice me. There were so many people there. My family, friends, and even my business partners. It was so bizarre. And then I saw Ronnie. He looked exhausted. I just wanted to run up to him and scream, "I'm alive! You can be happy again!" But then my sister Kylie appeared and took his arm and whispered something in his ear. I froze. They looked close, too close for comfort. And then I noticed people around me whispering, "Oh, it can't be that bad. He'll get a pretty penny from the insurance company for Bella's death." And then another lady said, not just that, but a younger, prettier wife too, by the look of things. I wanted to puke. Ronnie and Kylie were hugging each other now. All of this made me feel like my whole existence was meaningless. Nobody here really cared about me. I couldn't watch my sister and husband for a second longer. I ran out into the street and kept walking until I couldn't walk anymore. Then I found a motel to stay at. The next morning, I snuck home after my husband went to work. I needed to pick up some of my stuff and get some money. It was so weird being home. Everything looked the same, but I noticed none of my stuff was lying around anymore. Then I spotted it. A big box in the corner. I ran over to open it, and inside was all my belongings. I was shaking as I picked up the wedding photo that used to be on our nightstand. I mean, I was barely fresh in the grave, and already Ronnie had boxed me up. It was almost like he couldn't wait to kick me out of his life. Ouch! I wanted to get out of there, so I quickly went to our bedroom to get some cash and clothes. That's when I discovered a shocking secret that made me fall onto the floor. As I was taking my clothes out of my cupboard, a strange piece of paper fell out. And guess what? The first line caught my eye was Bella's death plan. It was a sketch showing the path leading to a waterfall and made up evidence along the way. OMG! This was it! I knew that waterfall. It was pretty close to where I had the accident. So, had Ronnie planned this? Was he sick in the head? What had I ever done to him to deserve this? I had to run out of there to clear my head, but something caught my eye at the newsstand. It was Kylie, on the front of the newspaper in an article about how she was going to be running the company in place of our grandfather. There was a photo of Kylie and Ronnie at the inauguration, and look how happy they were. They didn't seem to be upset about my death at all. I wanted to rip the paper up. But wait, why would my grandfather give up his position? He had never mentioned it. He loved his job. This didn't sound right. So I quickly took a taxi to his place to find out what was going on. When I got there, I was so shocked. My heart sank upon seeing him hooked up to medical equipment. Turns out that after he'd heard the news about my death, he'd had a heart attack. When he spotted me by the door, he was so stunned he almost fell off his bed. We hugged and cried, and I told him it had all been a big mistake. Gosh, I was so happy to see him. I could see he was tired, so I told him to rest up and I'd visit again soon. Then on the way out, I spoke to his assistant, Cody. I need a favor. Could you help me prepare a case against Ronnie? But suddenly I heard footsteps coming towards me. Bella? Is that you? I turned around, and it was Ronnie. I didn't even have time to think clearly before he rushed in to hug me tightly. I could feel the tears rolling down his cheeks, and he seemed genuinely shell-shocked to see me. I was disgusted, though. I pushed him away and said, "Stay away from me." But it was like he didn't hear me. He just said, "These have been some of the worst months of my life. I can barely sleep or eat. I can't believe you're alive." Liar! He was a liar! I started shouting at him, saying, "Stop acting like you give a darn! You wanted me dead! Just wait until this gets out. You'll be behind bars for the rest of your life." Then I took the sketch out of my bag and threw it at him. Ronnie swore he'd never seen it before, but I didn't believe it. If it's not his, then was he trying to say it was mine, or what? Ha! Hilarious. Suddenly, Cody interrupted our argument and said, "Calm down, please. Actually, I think the one who has been acting a bit shady recently is Kylie." Then Cody told us how, according to our grandfather's will, his inheritance would be split equally between me and Kylie. However, I was to be the one in charge of the company. Kylie had found out about this and had a big argument with our grandfather. And then not long after my accident, his health had deteriorated. Instead of letting him mourn my death, Kylie had insisted he transfer the business to her name so she could take care of it all. Then Ronnie said, "Bella, it was Kylie who set up our trip. Then you suddenly disappeared. I searched for you in Cambodia for weeks, but Kylie persuaded me to come home because your grandfather was so ill. Then the police canceled the case, and Kylie kept telling me to file your death certificate. I shouldn't have listened to her. I'm so sorry." "Stop blaming other people for your problem," I growled at Ronnie, but inside my heart, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Why would my sister do this? And then I heard Kylie's voice, and to prove it all, Ronnie told me and Cody to hide. And then he went towards her and said, "Kylie, about Bella's death. Before Ronnie could finish his sentence, she gave him a big smile and put her arm through his. Well, now that her funeral is over, nothing is stopping us from being together, right? Ronnie forced a smile. Then Kylie laughed and said, "Oh, come on. Don't be sad. My jealous sister didn't deserve you. You know what? She actually had this whole plan to test your loyalty, but then she ended up getting a taste of her own medicine." At that moment, my head started to hurt, and suddenly some of my old memories came flooding back. The sketch. It was mine. I was the one who'd made the plan. It all started when Kylie had told me that Ronnie was cheating on me, and I'd believed her and followed her advice to fake my own disappearance to test his love for me. How could I have been so stupid? When I realized I was alone in that forest and she wasn't coming back, I panicked and fell into a trapping pit, hurting my legs and getting stuck. It was all coming back to me now. I couldn't handle this. I ran towards her and painfully screamed, "How could you do this to me, Kylie?" At first, she was shocked to see me, but then she just smirked and said, "Are you still alive? Well, either way, it's too late. The company is mine now. Oh, and so is Ronnie, baby." Then she just rolled her eyes and said, "You were just the adopted child, so what makes you think you have the right to always steal everything from me?" At that moment, our grandfather appeared and slammed his cane on the ground. "Kylie, stop it." Kylie just sulked and said, "Honestly, why would you give her the whole company?" Then our grandfather said, "Look at yourself, Kylie. Are you really fit to be running a company? Sort yourself out. You are a disappointment to this family with your dirty, nasty tricks." I couldn't believe Kylie was still using the adopted thing to hurt me. So what if I was adopted? That didn't mean I wasn't a part of this family. She'd always been so jealous of me, even though I hadn't done anything. Kylie started crying and ran out of there saying she was sick of never being anyone's favorite. Well, maybe if she hadn't left me to die, people would like her more. I was so shocked that she'd done this to me, and all because of jealousy. I won't lie. It took me so long to work through this. I still haven't forgiven her properly, but I guess it will just take time. As for me and Ronnie, we've taken over the family business, and I realized that Ronnie had always been loyal. Kylie had just made up that he was cheating because she couldn't bear to see me so happy. One thing's for sure, I won't ever be testing his love again. No more faking death for me.
Oh no. Vivian's friends were walking over to her, so I quickly pulled her aside and sternly told her to go home immediately. Vivian moved her hand away and said, "Huh? It's none of your business. I could be anywhere with anyone and you have no right to force me." "Fine then. If you don't come with me, then I'll call Owen and you'll no doubt be sent off to boarding school by the end of the week. Is that what you want?" She reluctantly said her goodbyes to her friends, then followed me home. I couldn't help but smile proudly. I'd done a good job. Victory felt good. I'm Easton, and if you haven't seen parts 1 and 2 of my story, I suggest you go and check them out. As for Vivian, no, I don't have some sort of superiority complex. I'm only bossing her about like this because her dad, Owen, gave me the job of supervising her. I have had her best interests at heart. As if she messes up, then he's going to send her to boarding school. I don't get it. I know Vivian doesn't want to be sent away, but why couldn't she just behave? Ugh, she was so not a simple girl. In fact, Mischief should be her middle name. The next day when I walked into class, everyone was looking at me and laughing. Then the boy sitting next to me showed me a photo on his phone. Geez, what on earth was it? Yup, it was me asleep on my desk in my room. My mouth was wide open and I was drooling. Who the heck posted this online? Could only be Vivian. Suddenly, a paper plane hit my head. I unfolded it and read the message. "That was for embarrassing me in front of my friends, even Stevens." Well played, Vivian. Of course, I was far too much of a diligent and responsible person to bail on my mission because of some silly photo. You know what? Since I agreed to supervise Vivian, I always made sure she was in my sights. I followed her so closely that soon the rumors started circulating such as, "Are those two dating?" and "Easton is such a gold digger." But I just found their childish words amusing. Besides, I knew the truth. Until one day I was studying in the library when Lila sat down next to me. "What's going on between you and Vivian? I mean, you always seem to be together." I was too tongue-tied to reply, so Lila continued. I think you should stay away from her. Trust me, there's nothing good about that type of girl. Out of nowhere, Vivian jumped in and shouted, Oh, excuse me. What did you just say? So what type of girl do you think I am? Everyone in the library stared at us. Lila could hardly answer, while Vivian's glare unnerved me. I was trying to find a way to cool things down, but Vivian just angrily swiped the book off the table, then stormed off. I wanted to chase after her, but Lila grabbed my arm and told me to ignore her. Then, in a sweet voice, she asked me to help her with her math problem. I forced a smile and replied, yeah, sure. After that, every time I saw Vivian, whether it was at school or home, she didn't say a word to me and instead just gave me death stares. Her look was a little on the scary side and made me feel uncomfortable, but above all else, it made me feel guilty. But I didn't understand why. I hadn't done anything wrong, right? Then one time, I was on my way to the canteen when I saw Grace. What was she doing here? I caught up with her and she said the principal had called as Vivian was in trouble again. But as Owen was on a last-minute business trip, she had to come. She's such a pain in the neck. I had to leave my nail appointment early. She waved her halfway painted nails in front of me. Look, how hideous. I walked alongside Grace. Lunch would have to wait, as I needed to find out what Vivian had done now. I didn't understand it, as I had been keeping a close eye on her and I hadn't seen her do anything bad. From the outside, I saw both Lila and Vivian were in there. Grace stormed straight into the office and I stepped in behind her. It turns out the history exam had disappeared, and earlier on, Lila had seen Vivian sneaking into the teacher's classroom. Frustrated, Vivian shouted out, No, that wasn't me. Lila made that up. But the principal didn't believe her and was persistent that Vivian had done it. He also said Lila was an exemplary student, and there was no reason for her to make this up.
This is it. You're expelled,
the principal declared. I looked at Vivian with concern, and she looked like she was about to cry. Right at that moment, Grace spoke up. Do you have any other evidence besides this girl's words? How can you accuse Vivian like that when your only proof is another student's words? I don't think my daughter is that kind of person. Vivian looked up at Grace with her eyes widened. After discussing for a while, in the end, the principal changed his mind about expelling Vivian and decided this needed investigating further. Phew. I felt relieved. As we walked out of there, Vivian awkwardly looked at Grace and said, Thank you, then ran away. It was strange seeing her acting all timid, but I guess what Grace did meant a lot to her, as after that, they stopped the petty feuding. Grace didn't tell Owen about what happened, and Vivian even asked her friend to take care of her pet dog for a while so Grace could have a break from sneezing. It was nice not living in a war zone, but more than that, this version of Vivian was, well, very cute. It was a Saturday night, and I was playing on the PS5 in the living room when Vivian appeared. Whoa, she was all dressed up and she looked, really good. Later, losers. I'm going on a date with Carter. She waved at me. I immediately jumped up and blurted out, No, you can't. I mean, that's one of the taboos Owen had mentioned before. I tried everything to make her stay at home, but to no avail. So I grabbed my jacket and secretly followed them to their rendezvous. Yes, I was third-wheeling, but I needed to check nothing bad would happen to her. I mean, I'd promised Owen. I followed them to an open-air cinema. Ugh, cheesy. Sitting not far away, I saw them kissing, and then halfway through the movie, he took her hand and led her off. Where were they going? Looking at Carter's eager face, it wasn't hard to guess what he had planned. As Vivian's supervisor, I couldn't let that happen. So I immediately ran over to them, quickly wrapped my jacket around Vivian's waist, and whispered to her, Your Aunt Flo is on her way over. Vivian looked startled, and to Carter's surprise, she hurriedly told me to take her home. When we arrived back, she rushed up to her bathroom. And just as I expected, exactly 1 minute and 30 seconds later, she ran up to me and shouted, How dare you fool me! You ruined my 3-month anniversary date! Then she angrily went back to her room and slammed the door. She could be mad with me if she wanted. I was just doing my duty. After that, Vivian refused to talk to me. And whenever I saw Carter, Well, his death glares made his feelings toward me pretty darn clear. Then one day after school, while I was waiting for Vivian to appear at the school gate, my phone buzzed. It was from her. "I'm trapped in the girls' restroom on the second floor. Please hurry." Without thinking much, I rushed over there. I was just about to bang on the cubicle door when I felt someone grab my collar and pull me back. It was the principal, followed by Carter and Vivian. What? Why was she there? This was so confusing. The principal made me follow them to their office, then accused me of being a peeping perv. What? I tried defending myself, but he didn't believe me. I suppose this wasn't surprising, seeing as I didn't tell them about Vivian's message. However mad I was with her for framing me, I knew if I landed her in trouble, she'd be expelled. And I didn't want that. Not only did it majorly suck that everyone thought I was a peeping Tom, but I also ended up being suspended for the rest of the week. I stayed in my room feeling glum and forced myself to study. But I couldn't concentrate on anything, not even physics. This was awful. While I was thinking about it, I heard a knock on the door. I opened it to see Vivian standing there. Great, now she was here to rub salt in the wound. Regardless of how much you hate me, you shouldn't have framed me like that. This could affect my future. I went to close the door, but she stopped it with her foot. Wait, I have some good news for you, she smiled at me. You can go back to school tomorrow. It was all Carter, so you're off the hook. I looked at Vivian with amazement and asked if it was true. As soon as she nodded, I immediately hugged her. A few seconds later, I felt like I was overreacting, so I let go of her and scratched my head shyly. Then Vivian told me everything. Turns out she found out that Carter had stolen her phone and sent me that message to trap me. Then he told the principal he'd seen me sneaking into the girls' restrooms. Vivian made him confess, but she secretly recorded it and sent it to the principal. So I wasn't suspended anymore. What a relief. Man, I'm really grateful to Vivian. But then I asked her, but Carter is your boyfriend. Nah, I've decided I've outgrown bad boys. Instead, I want someone caring and sweet. She grinned at me. Well, this was a few months ago, and although Vivian is still feisty and stubborn at times, she is taking her studies more seriously now. The atmosphere in our house is pretty good, which makes my life so much easier. And you know what? Vivian and Grace are even going shopping together, and I have to go and carry their stuff. Oh, and if you're wondering about Vivian and me, I guess a rebel and a top student can get on after all. I guess we'll just have to see what happens.
Oh my God, Evan, let's get married on April 3rd. What? Are you serious? Yeah, look. Then she waved her phone in my face. On the screen was some article about choosing special dates to get married. It's 04/03/21. We could get married anyways, right? So why not choose a unique date? And you'll never forget our wedding anniversary. But babe, that's 3 days away. How are we going to arrange a wedding in such a short time? She jumped to her feet. We will marry on this special date. Then she ran off upstairs. She was kidding, right? As this idea was insane. Oh, by the way, that was Mila, my girlfriend. And I'm Evan, and we've been dating for over a year now. I didn't give any more thought to her mad idea, but then later I saw her making all these calls to wedding locations and everything. And that's when I realized she wasn't kidding. Unsurprisingly, all the local wedding venues were fully booked for that date. So Mila came up with a crazy plan. We would drive to the wedding capital of the world, Vegas. My God, this was lunacy. But Mila wouldn't take no for an answer, so it was settled. We were going to Vegas, baby. There's one problem. We live in Alaska, so the trip would take us about 2 days and 16 hours. We called into work to take a few days off, and then we woke up super early and began our long journey to Vegas. I have to admit that I was kind of excited about our adventure, but little did we know how many ridiculous situations we would come across on our way. We started the journey at 5:30, and only a few hours in, Mila got peckish, so she started munching on our snack supply. Later on, I was craving potato chips too, so I asked her to feed me some. But to my horror, none of the snacks were left, and we hadn't even crossed city limits yet. That's not humanly possible. Then, when we reached the highway, she suddenly said she needed a pee. I stopped at the nearest service station, but she didn't go to the restroom. Instead, she turned to me and said, "Actually, since we're here now, why don't we go grab some lunch?" Excuse me? But it was 10 a.m. And didn't she just eat all our snacks? I knew it was pointless arguing with a hungry girl, so I just followed her. After that, we hit the road again. I was getting a bit bored, so I reached for my phone to turn on some Post Malone. But Mila stopped me and said that she had something far more interesting. The audio novel To All the Boys I've Ever Loved Before. Jesus. It was so boring that it almost sent me to sleep. So for the safety of our lives and the lives of other drivers, I decided to stop at a motel to get some sleep. Besides, I couldn't endure hearing any more of Laura Jean and this guy Peter. The next day after breakfast at a diner, we were walking to our car when Mila suddenly saw a pregnant woman loading stuff into her trunk. She immediately ran over to the lady, then told me to do the heavy loading while she just stood there and chatted to her. Suddenly, the lady touched her stomach and said that she wasn't feeling well. Oh my God, don't tell me that she was gonna... Oh boy, her water broke! Quick, we need to get her in your car and take her to the hospital! My car? What if the baby comes out? But Mila didn't listen and was already helping the lady get into the back seat. My God, I hope the baby didn't slip out too soon or else I'd have to burn my car. Let me drive. You sit in the back with her. Her husband isn't here, so she needs a man for emotional support. What? That sounded absurd, but there was no time to argue. The lady began to scream because of the pain. I tried to calm her down by telling her to breathe in and out, but she just shouted, "Shut up!" Then held my hand and squeezed it really hard. Oh my God, she was going to break my fingers like toothpicks. It hurt so much I began to scream with her. Thank God we got the lady to the hospital on time. Phew, I couldn't imagine what would happen to my hand and my car if the baby had arrived any sooner. So the journey continued. As we were driving through Fort Nelson, I saw a guy holding a sign asking for a ride to the nearest service station. Of course, I ignored the dude and wanted to drive past him, but my girl Mila over here just couldn't seem to brush that aside. She made me stop the car and warmly welcomed him into our car. Ugh, that was so annoying. While I was driving, I smelled something really awful. My God, it was so smelly that I couldn't breathe. It had to be this dude. I gave Mila an angry glare, but she just gave me a guilty smile back. Well, at least she had to suffer too. I had no choice but to open the windows on a highway. Mila clutched her head as she shouted, "Are you crazy? Close the windows! The wind is ruining my hair!" Oh my God, was her hair more important than her nose? Thank God, after 30 minutes, we reached a service station and the guy got out of my car. I went to the restroom to freshen myself up, and when I came back, Mila was nowhere to be found. I was about to call her, but oh man, I left my phone in the car and she had the keys. After 45 minutes of searching, I gave up and went back to the car to find her sitting there, her arms folded as she glared at me. Where have you been? You do realize we have a tight schedule to keep." What? Was she serious? Then I suddenly heard someone coughing in the back. I turned around and to my horror saw a little boy sitting there. Why was there a kid in my car? Mila explained that his school bus had left without him and we needed to take him to his camping location. Not again, Mila. Why does she have to be that sweet little angel who couldn't help but have to help everybody? But my God, now there was not the time to be Charlie's Angels and rescue that little kid. I told her, and she immediately accused me of being heartless, cruel, and everything. Jesus. That's the third person I'd given a free ride to today. As I was driving to the camping location, the kid suddenly felt nauseous. I shouted at him to hold it as we were on the highway, and it was impossible to stop. But he started to make vomit sounds. Mila freaked out, so she grabbed something and let the kid throw up in there. After I found a place to stop, I turned around and saw that Mila threw all my stuff out and used my precious Nike duffel bag as a vomit bag. That's it. I'd had enough. So I shouted at the kid, "Get out of my car!" He got so scared that he ran out and started crying really loudly. That wasn't cool. He's just a scared little kid. How would you like it if your school bus left you behind? Okay, maybe I was a bit harsh on the kid. You can't blame me. It'd been a long couple of days, and that was my favorite bag. But still, I went outside to comfort the kid. Hey, please don't cry. I'm really sorry for earlier. I didn't mean to shout at you. I'm just really tired from all that driving. The kid stopped crying, but still looked very scared of me. So I said, "Hey, if you give me a smile, I promise to buy you some candy later." He immediately smiled and hugged me. Oh great, I was sure Mila didn't wipe his mouth clean after all that throwing up, as I got some vomit stains on my shirt. But hey, the hug kind of felt nice. We dropped the kid off and his teachers were very grateful. But because of everything we'd been through today, there was no way we could rest in a motel and make it on time to Vegas. So the only option was to drive through the night, so Mila took the wheel so I could catch some Z's. A honking sound startled me and I sat up and saw that we were going at a snail's pace. Mila, what's wrong? You're driving slower than my granny. I think we're lost. What? Why didn't she wake me up? Then, oh no, we suddenly heard a cop siren. And guess why we were pulled over? Yup, for driving too slowly in a 60-mile-an-hour zone. My God, I was freaking out. But Mila turned to me and said, "Just keep quiet and I'll do the talking." She opened the window and began to speak in a weird way. "Hi, officer, did I do something wrong?" "Can I see your license, please?" "Oh, yeah, absolutely. Here you go, Officer Good-Looking." "It's Goodlin." "Oh, sorry, my mistake. Please don't look at my picture. I was having a bad hair day when I took it." Oh, dear God, was she actually flirting with the cop? He looked at her license with a frown on his face. Oh, no, we'd end up being locked up. "Well, Miss Forrester, I think you look great in this picture. I'll let you off with a warning this time, but please be more careful. Driving at 20 in a 60-mile-an-hour zone is more dangerous than it sounds." Oh my God, thank you so much. Today must be my lucky day. I'm stopped by not only a very handsome but also kind-hearted officer. If I don't get married tomorrow, I will definitely get your number. My God, I think he gets it. After that, I didn't talk to her the whole night. How could she flirt with another man right in front of me? And now we had less than 16 hours to get to Vegas and get married. So we grabbed a quick breakfast from a diner, then carried on driving. On the plus side, we finally crossed the Canadian border. We were in Montana, baby. Then Mila turned to me and grumbled out, "FYI, you forgot to close the window again." Anything could have crawled inside while we were at that diner. Ugh, was she serious? I didn't have the time nor the patience for this, so I just nodded to let it go. We sat in silence, but suddenly I heard squeaking. No way was that Mila. Oh my God, something must be in my car. I pulled over and looked in the back seat to see a skunk jumped out right at me. We both screamed and got out of the car. While I was trying to think of a way to get rid of it, Mila suddenly pointed. Do you realize the car is rolling down that hill?" I turned around and the car was really moving. I must have forgotten to pull the handbrake. We chased after it, but luckily it rolled into a muddy patch. I looked inside and phew, at least the skunk had gone. I tried driving away, but the car made an awful sound and only seemed to sink lower into the mud. So I went outside to push the car, and Mila switched to the driver's seat, but then mud splashed everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. I called out for her to stop, but guess what? She didn't hear me over the music, she just had to play. Unbelievable. While here I was, covered in dirt. But, well, as annoying as the loud music was, the weekend's blinding lights kind of boosted me up somehow, which made me push the car as hard as I could. And yes, it got out of the mud. I was tired, dirty, hungry, and I just wanted to get to Vegas in one piece. Was that too much to ask? I think God heard my prayers, because we made it to Las Vegas, baby. And it was 11:30 p.m. I had about 10 minutes to shower and change, but Mila insisted that we go straight into the chapel. My God, Mila. I looked like I'd been wrestling John Cena in a mud bath. We ran towards the reception, and when I looked at my watch, it was 11:45 p.m. Oh my God, I couldn't believe we made it. The past 3 days felt like 3 freaking months. "Hi, it's 040321, and we're here to get married." The reception frowned at us, then said, "Sorry, sweetie, but it's the 4th. Then she pointed at the calendar on her desk. Huh? Had we jumped time or something? Then I had a light bulb moment. Nevada is 1 hour ahead of Alaska. My God, we totally forgot about that. It was already April 4th. Mila looked devastated, and I was feeling a bit down about it too. But if I really had been a groom with this muddy look, I never would have dared look at the wedding pictures ever. Moreover, after everything we've been through on this trip, I think it's best we get to know each other a bit more before we get married. I'm already happy with what we're having right now, so no need to rush, right?